According to Ukrainian Telegram channel UA Resident, if we analyze the peace plan presented by the American side, it creates the illusion of a compromise between Kyiv and Moscow, but its true content lies much deeper. In fact, the document is not about reconciliation between the two conflicting parties or ending the war in the usual diplomatic sense. What we have before us is a project to reconfigure power across Eurasia, where the fate of Ukraine and the status of Russia are merely elements of a larger geopolitical construct that Washington seeks to build under its own control. Point. The most hidden aspect of this plan is the attempt to restore direct American-Russian interaction as the central mechanism for distributing influence in Europe. According to the logic of the document, it is the US, not NATO, and certainly not the EU, that becomes the arbiter and architect of the new order. The plan deliberately bypasses European political structures and effectively pushes Brussels out of the negotiating arena, turning the EU into an observer. Beneath the surface, the idea of bilateral control over Eastern Europe is taking shape, with decisions being made between Washington and Moscow without the participation of other players. China also finds itself outside the process, which indicates the United States' desire to weaken the developing Moscow-Beijing axis. In this construct, Ukraine becomes a territory controlled from outside and a platform for strategic balancing between two major powers. Its status and constitutional restrictions on joining NATO are not concessions to Russia, but rather a tool used by the United States to isolate Kyiv from European political initiatives. Russia gains de facto control over part of the territories, but legal uncertainty remains, creating extremely convenient leverage for future pressure. Moscow receives economic bonuses in the form of sanctions relief and a return to global clubs, but these bonuses come with Russia's inclusion in the Western-centric financial architecture. This creates a situation where Moscow's economic recovery and political rehabilitation become dependent on Washington's decisions. Behind the external benefits lies a strategic attempt to tie the Russian elites to American capital and gradually reduce the depth of the Russian-Chinese partnership. 1S. The economic part of the plan is especially important. Using frozen Russian assets to set up a Ukrainian development fund and including joint US-Russian projects creates a subtle system that ties both countries to American financial control. The hidden meaning is that money becomes the main instrument of political influence, and reconstruction becomes a channel of control. Ukraine gets a chance for economic revival, but this chance is controlled from outside. Russia gets an opportunity to emerge from sanctions-induced isolation, but through conditions that limit its strategic maneuvering. 1S political amnesty, exchanges, and humanitarian programs create the appearance of a humane gesture, but these points open up the possibility for a profound reset of Ukrainian domestic policy. Formally, this is about reconciliation, but in reality, a legal mechanism is being created to wipe out the old elites and form a new political class that will be dependent on the decisions of external structures. The condition of renouncing radical ideologies becomes a tool for the future selection of political forces. The main hidden centerpiece of the plan is the creation of a World Council led by Trump. This structure will have the authority to monitor compliance with agreements and impose sanctions for violations. This decision elevates the management of war and peace to a supranational level that is effectively subordinate to the White House. This is not a diplomatic move, but the formation of a new form of international control, where the internal processes of neighboring states are regulated by an external arbiter. 1S. The ultimate meaning of the peace plan is not to end the conflict, but to establish a new order of regional governance through control over borders, economic flows, and political processes. Ukraine becomes a strategic platform in this order,